now we know the group, and everyone wants to know here what this means for Canada. And I know you gentlemen have been on for quite a bit talking about this, and this is the big one. And I have to say, I love the suspense, because knowing where each country falls into the group, immediately we knew that Canada needed to avoid, of course, that big group there. Of course, we didn't want them to be in Group E. So now when we look at Group F, what do we make in particular of Belgium, a team that has been ranked number 1 for so long, obviously now ranked number 2? Gareth, I'll start with you. What would be Canada, the expectations of taking on a team like Belgium for their first game at the World Cup?
Well, it's quite the introduction back to the World Cup stage, isn't it? That's one of the top 3 teams I probably want to miss, alongside France and Brazil, to be honest with you. But look, you get thrown into the fire right away. It sets the standard. And then I think you have 2 games that follow that I think that you can go out and get a result. Perhaps you catch Belgium in that first game. Look, we don't need to, of course we will list the players. You're playing Kevin De Bruyne, like my favorite midfield player in the world today. He's just absolutely phenomenal to watch. What's a Canada back line? How are they going to fare against just a beast up top like Romelu Lukaku? These are the first things that go through my mind. Like, this is the ultimate test in your first game in the tournament. Then you move on to Morocco. There's some real talent in this Moroccan side. I know that they're not the most sexy of teams, but they dispatched of Democratic Republic of Congo with ease in World Cup qualifying. This is a country that was at the last World Cup in a difficult group featuring Spain and Portugal. Don't sleep on them. And Nesri's a very good striker up top. Al Haddadi, 2 players that play for Sevilla in La Liga. So I think they are better in attack than they're going to get credit for. And like KJ said, as we were coming on here, this Croatian side, I think their best days are behind them. They had a relatively easy World Cup qualifying group with Russia. I think it was Slovakia. It wasn't a very strong group, and there were some serious questions leading into World Cup qualifying what this team would look like. They got knocked out of the Euros in a dramatic game against Spain. It was 5-3 in extra time. It was bonkers. It was wild. But I like a younger Canadian attack going up against an aging back line. Vida, of course, plays his club football with who? Atiba and Larin at Besiktas. His best before date is well past. I mean, Luka Modric is an absolutely phenomenal player. He's 36 now. Perisic, 33. Like, this is an aging team. I said it on One Soccer today. Out of the, understanding that you couldn't draw a group with United States and Mexico, Croatia was that next team that I wanted from that group. I think they're vulnerable. I think that they're beatable. I'm not thinking about the World Cup finalists of 2018. I'm just thinking of a team that a lot has happened since then, and their core players have got older. So look, all things considered, it's a good group. It's one that Canada will approach with absolutely no fear whatsoever. And I think that by virtue of getting Belgium first, getting that game out of the way, it sets the standard and you'll figure out where you stand.
Yeah, Ollie, what was your reaction?
Covered everything.
Yeah, you went through it all there.
Sorry.
We're done. See you later.
Now we need to look ahead and say, they get out of the group. Would they be, who would they be taking on a group B? But we won't get that far. I want to say 10 minutes time, John Herdman is actually going to be joining us here. So we'll get his reaction as well. But Ollie, after Gareth, Charlie, and KJ here giving their thoughts on the group, what did you think when you saw Canada draw? And I love that Canada was the last also to get drawn. I just loved it. It was
12 times what group they were going to end up in. I'm like, oh no, it's A, it's C, it's B, it's C. It was like, my brain almost exploded.
They saved the best for last.
I've been waiting a long time. I was getting so excited. Oh my God, no, it's not. And,
I could picture what your poor wife was going through in that household. But Canada's name finally gets drawn. They did save the best for last. Ollie, your reaction to that?
Yeah, Will's touched on it there. The really interesting thing about this draw for me is that you've got 2 really good European teams, vastly experienced European teams. Belgium have been deep in this tournament. Croatia have obviously been to the final. But I think they are past their best. Now, I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that I think they're weak or easy teams to beat. That's obviously not going to be the case. They're going to be incredibly tough games for Canada. But they're not teams that are in their prime. Like, I really think that last World Cup felt like the one where Belgium, had a real chance to win it and weren't able to do so. So that's a really interesting matchup for Canada, because you're playing these teams that, again, have so much quality and so much know-how of playing at these tournaments repeatedly, and, players who play at the highest level of club football as well. But you just wonder, like, this is such a young, athletic Canada side. What is that matchup going to look like, right? Could that be something that plays into Canada's hands a little bit, or at least gives them a chance against teams like that? Maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I just think those are really interesting matchups for Canada. If you're going to get some of those top European teams, I think those two are actually present some interesting opportunities for them. Morocco is an interesting one as well, because they're a bit of a wild card, I think, and maybe a dark horse. Like, they're not a bad team. The coach was the coach of Algeria in 2018. He got them through the group stage, which was a surprise. They've got some talent in that team. Obviously, Hakimi at PSG is the big one. They also have some problems in the team, like Ziyech doesn't play for them. Mazraoui at Ajax doesn't play for them right now, so there's some question marks there as well. But they're not going to be a pushover. But as that draw was unfolding, it basically got to the point where you're looking at every possible Canada group, and it's like there is none where you look at the group and there's one team that you think, yeah, Canada really could beat this team and get 3 points on the board and have a real chance. Every game was going to be difficult in whatever group they ended up with, and I think that's the case with Group F, but I don't think it's a group of death either. Canada, I think, has a chance here.
Yeah. Thank you to Charlie for all the hours there and the watch party and setting everything up. Did that brilliantly. So he's now checked out. I don't know how much, KJ, you put into the FIFA rankings, only because when you do look at them, it is a pretty balanced group. I mean, obviously Belgium, is the top ranked number 2. Then you have Croatia 16, Morocco 24th. This is going on the FIFA rankings. And then you have Canada at 38. They slipped from 33 because obviously the losses to Costa Rica and then ending off with the loss to Panama. But would you say this is a pretty balanced group?
I do think that. I think it's a good draw for Canada. Look, I don't mean that necessarily to get through, but what will be. Two things I was looking for. I wanted Canada to play the best team first. I just think, as Wheel said earlier, you go back to the last World Cup, Germans got shocked by Mexico. England needed a 90th minute goal against the Tunisians, I think. I think Brazil drew against Swiss. Like, the first team, the teams do not peak right away. Play that first team first. You've got a shot, right? That's what I mean. The second thing I was looking for is the two major teams out of pot 1 and pot 2. I wanted to look at them and think, I think one of you can't get through. And I look at that group right now and I think one of you might not get through. That's the key. I couldn't make that argument with Spain, Germany, guys. We could all sit here and go, what a great group that would have been. I couldn't have made the argument to say, Spain, Germany, they might not get through. I can make that argument with Belgium and Croatia. You can make that argument that they've got a shot here. So for me, I think that those things, the fact that they play Belgium first and they've got a team like Croatia, like these guys have said, that they've got a chance against. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that, I don't mean in the game. I mean over 3 games, over group stages. Croatia could lose all those 3 games. They could win them all. But I think it's very, very competitive. And Morocco, as you said, their coach, Salaric, he's been fired twice before. He's got to World Cups 4 times, been fired twice before going there. So they're always in turmoil as it is. Like, he got Ivory Coast there and got fired. He got there last time and got fired. So who knows what's going to go on with them as well. So we'll have to find out. Do not sleep on them. They've got some good players. But, I like the fact that Canada play them last. And if you've got a point before that, you've got a chance to get through here.
Yeah. All right. So we love the group of death. We talked about this on the show yesterday. And we also talked about the group of life.
Can I just add one thing? Like,
sure,
we might like the group, but I think that we're not trying to paint a picture that's not accurate here. Like, when you're in pot 4, the odds are stacked against you. You're generally playing better teams. So in the 2018 World Cup, 2014 was a little bit different because there was a European group where
they did
pot
it differently.
4 was like stacked with England and France and a bunch of other teams. But in 2018, just one team advanced from their group, a team that was featured in pot 4. That was Japan. And they were 1-1-1. The other teams that were in pot 4, Saudi Arabia, they won a game, finished 3rd. Morocco were in pot 4. They finished 4th. They came away with a draw. Australia 4th, Nigeria 3rd, Serbia 3rd, South Korea 3rd, and Panama just got absolutely thrashed. So we're being realistic here. Like, the odds are against Canada. It's not, no one's coming out and saying Canada's a better team than Croatia or Canada's absolutely going to go on here. But you need to be realistic. But all things considered, to KJ's point, it's a draw you can look at and say, yeah, you can approach this without fear.
Okay.
You're never looking for likely here. You're looking for possible, and I think they've got that with this draw.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but let's go around a little bit here and talk about the group of death. If you were to look at this, would that be Group E for you, Ollie? Who like, if you look at this group and you're saying there's just no way, you'd want to be a part of that. But of course, as a viewer, you can't wait to watch the games. What group is that for you?
Yeah, it's got to be Group E, right? Like, just Spain and Germany straight off the boards. good luck to Costa Rica, New Zealand, and Japan, but I can't see that, any of them having a chance of getting out of that group. But there's a few that are tough, to be honest with you, like France and Denmark was one I was looking at that Canada could have been drawn into. It's like, that's going to be hard as well. I think those two stood out for me, and Group G as well, with Brazil and Serbia and Switzerland. Like, Switzerland never jump off the page as like a really kind of glamorous team, but they're effective.
Ollie, let's be honest. Let's be honest here, though, Ollie. There's no group of death here. There's no group of death where there's 3 or 4 teams that are absolute powerhouse. Like, what's the difference between Group E this go around than Spain and Portugal being drawn with Morocco and Iran in the last World Cup? You have
maybe
2 teams that are vast. And guess what? For Spain and Portugal, that wasn't easy. Getting into that group in 2018, it was a little bit. Things went sideways. There's no group of death here in this tournament. No matter, we always want to point out a group of death. There is no group of death in this.
I agree. I do love, though, that Spain and Germany are in that Group E, and again, to us optimistic Canadians, what a prize that would be to match up with that team, because you match up with them in the last 16. So you get a chance to go to a last 16 of a World Cup, and you're staring down the barrels of a World Cup winner in Spain or Germany to play. That is the ultimate prize. Canada's not winning the World Cup, but imagine getting to the last 16 and playing one of them two. Thank you. Yes, that's what you want. You want to play a team like that. No, that's fun. What an unbelievable prize that would be at the end of this remarkable journey. That's what I look at. That's a present that's dangling there that I want to open. That's the way I look at that one.
KJ, do you know what I'm looking at here? When Wales goes on to win Group B, there's a path deep in this tournament for Wales. Like USA, Wales, England, buddy. Smash Wales, them. England. Iran, smash Wales. We'll beat you this time, unlike Euros. So, and then Group A is soft. Group A is very soft. I've been plotting this out just in the brief minutes that we have before coming on. So, just want to throw that in there.
Whoa. We're not going to say so. We're going to call. Is it the Group of Life? Then is that what we're talking about?
I don't know that Group A is that soft. To be honest with you, I think if Senegal and Netherlands come out of that, they're 2 decent teams.
I think Brazil or Germany or Spain.
I think Senegal were the best team in pot 3, and I think Ecuador, you could argue, maybe one of the best teams in pot 4 to all these points. So I know what you mean. The other thing I'd say about England quickly, England got the Americans, right?
Yeah.
Canada got 2 European teams. John Herdman is English. You play teams before the World Cup in friendly games to prepare you for your opponent. England are going to want to play a CONCACAF team before the World Cup because they're playing the US, right?
Yeah,
England, Canada friendly before the World Cup. It makes sense.
Bring it on.
Right? I like it.
It makes.
I remember.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Before the last World Cup, I think everyone in Panama's group played Costa Rica in a friendly to prepare for Panama.
I mean, we can sit here and say how different Canada played to the United States. It's just the way it is. It's just that's how a lot of these things happen. Canada are now making calls to play European teams in the opposition to get ready for the World Cup. US are going to make calls to play. I mean, England are going to make calls to make CONCACAF opposition, I think.
Yeah.
So if we're going to go overall storylines, I think for this World Cup as well, this is probably going to be the last time. I say probably, but it's likely. Or should I just say it's the last time we're going to see Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi at a World Cup. And it's pretty special, obviously. These are 2 gentlemen who are so successful in their careers. We know Portugal has won Euros. We know finally as well for Messi in Copa America, but they've never won the coveted World Cup. They have never hoisted that trophy. So Argentina in a group with Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Poland. Portugal is in that group with Ghana, Uruguay, and South Korea. Why don't we look at Portugal first, gentlemen, and just, what are you expecting in that Group H for Cristiano Ronaldo, Ollie?
That one could be a really fun group if Ghana and Korea are decent. And I don't think this is a particularly good Ghana team. They kind of limped into the World Cup. It's not really the kind of team that we've seen at previous tournaments that has been really exciting to watch, and obviously had that really famous matchup against Uruguay, a very controversial matchup against Uruguay, which they get a rematch for there. I look at that one. I think that could be a very entertaining group, but I think Portugal should come through it fairly comfortably.
Okay. Anyone else want to touch on that, or you want to touch on Messi? Feel free. Go ahead, Gareth.
I wanted Canada to draw Argentina. I just playing an immortal player like Lionel Messi at the World Cup. I think that would have been something really special. Argentina, no team is hotter right now in international football than Argentina. I mean, when did they lose last? Like them and Brazil are on another planet right now. compared to just about anyone else. Argentina has a real shot here. I think they have a relatively easy group. Mexico played safe, looked scared during World Cup qualifying. Poland, I think they're improved from the sides that have kind of let us down at previous tournaments. I think there's more around Lewandowski this time, but enough to get past Argentina, I'm not quite sure. Obviously, then it depends on how Group D shakes out with France and Denmark. And same thing with Portugal. I mean, look, I think Lionel Messi is more likely to play in another World Cup than Cristiano Ronaldo. Cristiano Ronaldo is 36 now. And is starting to show it a little bit. In the same group, by the way, with his Manchester United teammate, Edinson Cavani. And we'll see what Uruguay can offer in this tournament. Portugal are going to be the overwhelming favorites in Group H. It's their job to go on and win the group. Guess who they play, though? Potentially Serbia, a team that was in their qualifying group and finished ahead of them and forced them to go through the back door and qualify through a playoff. So, look, there's no easy path here. But, both have won their continental championships. It's time to go on and win a World Cup. Is this the time for two of the best players that we've ever seen? Potentially, but there's a lot of good teams here.
Yeah, and that's the storyline, KJ. I mean, you're right. Who never say never until the player themselves says, I'm done and I'm not going to play. But inevitably, KJ, those two players, as much as we talk about the countries and the groups, those are the two players that will always stand out. They're the ones we talk about, especially since this is a trophy that has eluded them. What are you really, and I don't want to say that this will cement their legacy. I think their legacies have been cemented, but if you want to add the bow and the sparkles and the razzle dazzle and rainbow, of course, winning a World Cup would just put them into a completely different stratosphere. But what are you expecting from those two players in particular?
Well, first of all, it's important to know, and this is not breaking news, but they're significantly in decline. And there will be expectations on them will be far exceeding what they should be on anyway. But I think but whenever they go far, it's a fantastic draw for the World Cup and for FIFA. And I think you look at this and you go, this is a great draw for both of them. I think Gareth's bang on with Argentina. They're a scary team. When you exited 4 years ago from that World Cup in Russia, you thought, this is a shambles. Messi's retiring. It's a mess. He's never going to win anything. And now they go there with a genuine possibility, particularly when you look at this draw. Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Poland, they have to win the group. They have to win that group. There's no doubt they won't win that group for me. And then you think, okay, they'll play the runner-up in Group D, and then they go with A and B, which is not a strong half either. So I think there's a lot to like about what they've been given. And then Portugal as well. Portugal have given a group that they feel like they can win. It's great that Ghana and Uruguay are there together. We got the Suarez thing again after 2010.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean?
Forgot about that.
That's fantastic.
I was in South Africa when that happened. I mean, brilliant, KJ.
Yeah, that's special. I'm happy for the Ghanaians because I know they want a little bit of another bite out of Uruguay a little bit. So,
Hey, excuse me. Don't bring up bad memories from 2014 because it was the bite. And then Italy ended up losing to
then the
Uruguay.
Suarez, the cheater.
Yeah, we are not going to get into that. That is for sure. Let's not forget, by the way, how great is it, though, to even just obviously see Messi still be part of this team and have this chance? Because what was it? After Copa America 2016, where, he sent the ball right over the net there in the penalty kicks, where he actually retired from the national team. It has been a long 6 years, for Lionel Messi, but it is great to obviously see him back here. John Herdman will be joining us shortly. We're waiting on the head coach of Canada. And I put out, this is a bit of a personal note, because I put out a photo. It just blows my mind that the 2014 World Cup, when we were hosting that was, Rio 2014. John Herdman was a guest analyst. He came on in at the time. He was still the head coach, for the women. He came in as a guest analyst. Obviously, he's cerebral and the way he thinks the game. He was a fantastic analyst. But I'm still trying to wrap my head around him now coaching in a World Cup, going from being a guest analyst to now coaching in a men's World Cup. So, look at that. I love the people behind the scenes. They snagged that pretty quickly. Yes, look at how young he is in that photo there. And yes, I was a brunette. The brunette's fake. The blonde's real. Yeah.
Establish that.
I just wanted to put that out there very quickly. But
you can work either one, Andy. They both look good.
And I don't feel like we could talk about this enough, Ollie, and what John Herdman has been able to do for both the men and the women's program. Of course, the first head coach to bring a women's team and a men's team to a World Cup. But when you see that, and you also just know his history as well, like, again, he was a guest analyst on a Men's World Cup, and now here he is coaching in what he's been able to do for this program. It's just so phenomenal.
Yeah, it's absolutely remarkable. And it's really interesting to hear him talk about like how he kind of set that target of, what's it going to take for us to go into the first game of a World Cup and be competitive, right? And get a result in that very first World Cup game. And then you work backwards from there and you kind of plan out the amount of time you got to that potential date and put all the pieces together. Think about, what kind of progress each individual player needs to make in their own game to be ready for that moment. And you just put that picture out there and it's amazing what can happen when you have that vision and you have a plan and a coherent plan that goes along with it. And you work to that step by step, right? Like it seems like an incredible turnaround in a short period of time, but it's really, 3 or 4 years that they've been working towards this. And there's a lot of work that goes into that period of time. So yeah, it's incredible to have the coach who's going to, the first one to go to the men's and the women's World Cup. And I'm sure he'll have them ready for Belgium on November, 23rd?
Yeah, we're 233 days away, I think we are, from the start of the World Cup. And he did tell us that once this campaign was over, he's going on vacation. He deserves to take a nice long vacation. But Gareth, we both know.
Just canceled it.
Did he? He's like, he's already putting pen to paper and probably drawing up the matchups. He's looking at all the players on Belgium, Morocco, Croatia. He's doing just that. But what would you anticipate, Gareth, the next steps for Herdman? Of course, it's trying to get those matchups right against teams that can prepare them here for the World Cup.
I want to let all Canadian soccer fans that preparations here are not straightforward for Canada. They're competing in the CONCACAF Nations League, a tournament that we all love. It's great for the region, play other teams. It gives other, some smaller countries the chance to advance. And it was a platform for Canada in order to take a step forward heading into World Cup qualifying. But with 2 games in June, could be against El Salvador, Panama, Curacao, like kind of the lesser likes of the region. I'm just not talking about like the Mexicos, the United States, and the Costa Ricas of the world. Is that the proper preparation that you want heading into a World Cup? Probably not. You want big marquee friendlies. Then the other thing is, if you're going to have a Canada camp, do you hold it in this country? Do you hold it overseas? What's best? How do you capitalize from a marketing perspective? Get a big number, a big ticket, make some money for the federation, getting into a big stadium. Where is that game played? Much more difficult to bring top European sides cross country to a place like Vancouver, where it's an extra, 4 or 5 hour flight to get out there than it is to play somewhere like Toronto. But you can fit more people into a stadium like BC Place. So that June window, you might get 1 game. The September window, you're getting close. That's when you want to ramp things up. You're able to have a couple more, but this isn't an easy path for Canada and just in terms of their preparation. So once again, the association will have to take advantage of their resources, invest in whatever they want. If they do have let's say an overseas camp, be willing to fly the team back and play here in Canada, and so you can get the gate. It's just going to be complicated piecing this all together. We're fortunate we have all those games in the preparation for the World Cup on One Soccer, and we'll be waiting to hear who and when they play. But the Nations League's a big part of that. But then those glamour ties, some real difficult build-up games, I think they're vitally important for Canada. And KJ said this before. I honestly think that Canada need to play the best that they can. You almost want the team to feel some adversity. Maybe they go out and get smashed, 3-0 in a game, just to experience what's that like, something different from what they've experienced in CONCACAF. And they can use that experience to carry it forward with them, to kind of hit the ground running when they get to Qatar.
Yeah, it's the speed of the game, right? It's different a little bit over there in Europe. The one thing I think that's really helpful for Canada is a lot of their major pillars, Davies, David, Milan Boyan, many others, Larea, they're playing European football. And it comes at a crucial time, a unique time right in the middle of the European season. So, they get that summer off a little bit and then they get going again. The MLS guys are the ones who would have played a lot more minutes without a break. And I think that will help them a little bit too in terms of getting ready in that preparation for that first game in November. And I think that's another reason why John Herdman would like to have more players playing at that level, because obviously that will help the European teams. I don't think we're going to get a Kevin De Bruyne in a summer tournament gassed after playing 63 games for Manchester City and winning, trophies other than the Champions League that they can't win all season long. This is going to be a Kevin De Bruyne who finally gets to put his feet up on a beach in the summer and then get ready for the World Cup. And he hasn't been able to do that for years. So the European teams will be helped by that. But my final point before I go, guys, I'll just say is I do think the opponents that Canada play want the ball. And I think that helps Canada. I do think the last thing they wanted was teams who are just going to sit in and say, come to us. I still think this counter-attacking, pacey team that they've created here, and I know that evolution will eventually change, but I think that helps them against these opponents.
Yeah, great stuff. KJ, you deserve a glass of water, and you deserve to put your feet up somewhere as well. That's a lot of hours of programming here, getting us through the draw and explaining it wonderfully. So great stuff, my friend.
Thanks,
he could go for another 5 hours. It's KJ.
Thanks, teammates. Always a pleasure working with you guys. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody.
Probably could. There's Christian Jack. Great stuff from him. You've been watching him for the last few hours here, the watch party, and taking you through the draw and all of the dances and the singing and the introduction of the mascot. It was all very fun. But John Herdman right now, we know obviously he's part of the broadcast here at TSN. He's also talking about, just to your point there, Gareth, he mentioned getting to Europe. He actually wants the team to actually make their way to Europe to try and take on some European teams. Looks like we will see one probably in June, a couple in September. But we make a lot of atmosphere, and we've loved the atmosphere, obviously, here in Canada. It's second to none in what we saw, obviously, in Edmonton and then saw at BMO Field. But do you think that also helps with preparation and going to some of these other places as well in Europe? I mean, they've experienced so much between Central America. I mean, they've had a lot of that. But I wonder as well now, just experiencing a little bit of a European atmosphere too, for him to make that point about wanting to go to Europe to play those teams.
Think about all the games that they played through COVID and even before that. All of them have really been within CONCACAF. There hasn't really been like a stiff test, among other federations. I think that, playing CONCACAF teams at this point doesn't serve a purpose for the end, for the end goal of playing at the World Cup in 2022. I try to play a Northern African nation as well. Tunisia, who's in the tournament, be decent preparation. Potentially Egypt, who's not even involved in this tournament. So it's not just going to play European teams. That game against Morocco is going to be crucially important. That's the one game that jumps out the page. You're like, must win. That's their second game of the tournament. Like, coming off whatever happens against Belgium, you're hoping for the best, hoping that you can catch them. But that second game against against Morocco, if you go on and win that game, then you're probably feeling relatively confident heading into the final match, knowing what's in front of you. So it's not just
Croatia, I think, isn't it?
Pardon me?
Second one is Croatia, I think.
I had Morocco down. Maybe I got it in the wrong order, but
I may be wrong. I think it's Croatia.
I have it up here. Hold on. It's on December 1st. It's 2 versus 4, isn't it?
That's the third game. Yeah.
That still blows my mind that we're talking about games in December. And
that's the second game. Yes, you're right. So they play Morocco last. Okay.
Yeah,
that's my mistake.
It's also pretty.
Gonna be a big one.
It's going to be pretty big, but here's. I mean, we right away when I looked at the group, I immediately looked at Canada's history with these countries. I mean, the last time they were all friendlies. They've never played Croatia. The last time they played Belgium was 1989. It was a loss. They have a loss and 2 draws against Morocco. They've played them 3 times all time. The last time was 2016. I don't know how much stock you put into that, Ollie. Already what we've seen the Canadian men's team do in the last year and how they've progressed. And again, ranked in the 70s, and now here we are ranked 38th in the world, and they actually reached their highest at 33 at one point. So I don't know how much stock you put into how Canada is going to match up against these teams themselves, which are drastically different, right? They've never played Croatia. Last time they played Morocco was 2016, and the only time they played Belgium was 1989. How much do you look at those results?
I look at them absolutely zero, to be honest with you. I think the big challenge for Canada, and this again comes back to the friendlies and the preparation, is that there's just, European football is a different style of football to CONCACAF, right? Like there's so many differences between facing even the strong CONCACAF teams like Mexico and playing against a team like Belgium. So that's where, I think going to Europe and playing away in Europe, I wouldn't even say it's so much about playing in a European environment. I think you just want to play those teams away because it's harder to play them away, and you want the biggest test possible against, whether it's a Netherlands or a France or someone like that, to prepare you for Belgium, right? I don't think we really know what the environment in Qatar is going to be like in an air-conditioned stadium halfway around the world. It's going to be pretty unique. But what you do need to prepare for and what you need to adjust to is the kind of football Belgium play, the challenges that presents, the opportunities it also potentially presents as well. And that's something that Canada just has not experienced any time in the past. Anytime that's relevant with this group of players, right? Because this group of players has come together over the past 2 or 3 years. So that's something that's going to be absolutely vital. Hopefully they can fit in the games they need around Nations League. And like Will said, you're probably looking at a Northern European team. You're looking at maybe a Serbia or someone like that. I don't know how comparable these teams really are, just because they're geographically close. But it's what normally happens. And then and then a North African team maybe to prepare for Morocco.
Yeah,
I was just thinking about the Belgium ties, Ollie. Like Jonathan David did well playing in Belgium. Tajon Buchanan's there now. Ike was there briefly. Like there's some ties there between nations, isn't there? So it's exciting. Like, look, it's not just Lukaku, it's not just De Bruyne, Eden Hazard. I know that his game has completely changed since going to Real Madrid. Whenever he plays for Belgium, he's just absolutely dynamite. Him coming down the left, Alistair Johnston. Let's see what he can do against and Eden Hazard. It's just crazy to say. Tielemans in the middle of the park with Witsel. Like it's a balanced central midfield as well. It's a 3-4-3 formation that Roberto Martinez plays. It's not a 4-4. I think the advantage there is how Belgium's going to line up. They're very much attack minded, liking to play on the front foot. It's just such an exciting game to open the tournament in so many different angles that we're going to be able to approach it with.
I have to ask you if you believe, and I'm going to point this out right now, that the last time a country has won back-to-back World Cups was Brazil, 1958, 1962. And in recent history, the winner has not done well the following 4 years. You look at, even Italy winning in 2006, don't even make it out of the group. Spain, the same thing, horrible in 2014. Germany, the same thing, didn't go well for them in 2018 after, they won in 2014. Do you think France can repeat, or is this going to be the curse of the champion? I mean, I don't understand how this happens. I don't know if in recent history how it is that you go from being the world champ to, I get it, not necessarily repeating, but then they don't even make it out of their group. I just don't know if you feel like France will fall victim to that as well.
I don't know if they'll win the World Cup, because it's really hard to win a World Cup, obviously, and even harder to win it back to back. I don't think they'll flop. Like there's always a bit of potential for it with France, because they've got a team of big personalities and characters, and that sometimes doesn't mix in the right way. And you can always end up in a position where, a cycle goes on a bit too long, maybe not enough changes are made to freshen the group up, and it can hurt you. But like, you look at this team, like they have arguably the best player in the world in Kylian Mbappe, who's just getting started in his career. Kante's still world class. Varane is, still only in his late 20s. It's still a team that is full of players in their 20s playing at the absolute top of the game. In the group they've got,
amazing.
Well, exactly, and yeah, even at the age he's at, still incredible. In the group they've drawn out. If they don't get through the group stage, it will be a major shock, one of the biggest in World Cup history.
Just Roberto Martinez was on TSN. He was interviewed by Matthew Shinetti post-draw, and said that Canada is a hidden threat in the group, and their strength is their togetherness. They play like a club team. That tells me that Martinez has been watching Canada, because that's kind of our sentiment, isn't it, guys? Like, they're so organized. It's not just a group of players that just get together and come together and play for a country, and you just try to exploit or, try to focus on your best players shining. Like, Canada plays together in a clear system. There's a clear identity that's being developed. I think that's insightful stuff from Martinez, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I would be surprised if people weren't watching Canada, and I get it, right? We're obviously we've been the national broadcaster for this team. We've been following them. We're going to sing their praises, and rightfully so, given what they've been able to do back at a World Cup for the first time since 1986. But how you really get an understanding of how the team is viewed, obviously, is when you go to the outsiders. And what's the rest of the world saying about Canada? Now, that's a small snippet, and that's also somebody who's in the group who's not going to, maybe that's a bit of gamesmanship. Who knows, right? I mean, I don't think first day, the draw, he's going to come out and crap all over the teams that he's taking on in his group. But
but there's pressure, Andy. There's
no,
pressure.
there is.
Like
There is, but
Belgium
I'm just
lost to
saying,
your Italians at the Euro. Like this is their generate. Like this is a generate. They've
Yes.
never had players like this before, but they haven't won a thing.
no.
Like in that first game, they need to hit the ground running. There's a lot of pressure on Belgium heading into this tournament.
For sure. But I just think that in these next few months, right, leading up to the World Cup, we're going to start to really realize and hear and learn, I think, what the rest of the world also thinks of Canada. And this is just across the board in any sport. It's always that little minnow who sometimes you perhaps take advantage of, who can do something pretty spectacular. So I can also see why Martinez wouldn't necessarily take them for granted, right? Because it's like, well, wait a second, they've done something great. But again, it's been within CONCACAF. We're not sitting here being completely delusional. And I don't think Herdman is either, which is why he's already, it sounds like, lobbying to get those games against European teams, and also wants to be in different environments as well in playing against these teams. So that's obviously, really huge for the Canadian squad in prepping for this. Now, this is kind of interesting. And this is something you'd probably have to ask an athlete. And perhaps when John Herdman joins us, we'll be getting him in about 10, 15 minutes time. I've heard other athletes say this, whether they know they're going to the World Cup, athletes who also know they're going to the Olympics, basically big global sporting events. How do you play now, especially with your club team? Are you hesitant? Do you want to avoid injury? Like, what are we also going to see here from many teams, not just Canadian? Obviously, we focus on the Canadian side because I've heard players say this before. Now, all of a sudden, there's a little bit of this fear of, I want to make sure I'm in the best shape of my life. And maybe there's a tackle they don't go full blown on, right? Maybe there's just a play they don't go all out on because they don't want to risk any kind of injury. I think that's going to be kind of interesting to see how John Herdman handles that. And that'll definitely be a question for him, I think, when he joins us. But I don't know what you'd be expecting from a lot of these Canadian players as they go back to their club teams and how they'll end up playing.
I mean, I don't think you can have that in your mind at all. Like, I don't know. Obviously, I wasn't a player anywhere near the level of these guys were, but I was always told that the easiest way to get injured is to start worrying about getting injured and pulling out of tackles and, making bad decisions that you wouldn't normally make because you don't want to get hurt. I think you have to take that out of your minds. The focus for these guys has to be playing football week in, week out. And that's going to be, where there's some interesting situations. And we've talked about, Richie Laryea at Nottingham Forest and things like that, particularly as we come into the summer transfer window. And even someone like Jonathan David making a big move, right? He's got to take that into consideration. Of course, he's going to be in the team for Canada no matter what, but you want to be playing, you want to be in form and, playing your best football at the right time as you go into that tournament. So that's the big consideration for me. That's going to be a big story for a number of players throughout the summer transfer window is, making sure all of these guys are in the best possible situation to be confident, to be informed going into that World Cup, which is obviously different coming in the middle of the season instead of at the end of it.
Yeah, if you want to play, if you want to be part of the 23-26, you need to be on good form. There's no cutting corners here. I think it actually suits Canada, who has a strong MLS contingent because the MLS season wraps up in the fall. They've kind of moved it a little bit forward because of the World Cup being played in November, but there's no concerns like heading into the January window, right, Andy, where like the January window, the players are out of season. There's no concern about that. They'll be wrapping up a long season, but I think it's easier to maintain than stop than start again. So I think it actually is an okay thing for the MLS players. And there's probably going to be more MLS players on Canada than any other nation, and that's including the United States in this tournament. So I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing.
We mentioned earlier Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, and just the two stars, the two faces whenever you head into a big global event in the World Cup, and eyes will be on them, pressure will be on them. But how about a coming out party as well? We can see this really truly being an introduction to the world. And it feels kind of strange saying this about Alphonso Davies because, in fact, TSN in part of their pregame coverage here to the draw had shown that a marketing company was able to prove that of the top Canadian athletes globally, Alphonso Davies actually tops that list. This was, a story that was covered by their senior sports writer in Rick Westhead, because this is where I think the dichotomy is. We know he's a global superstar. We know he's I just don't want to, and I don't think he's going to fall into that same category as Atiba Hutchinson, right? The most famous Canadian, not famous in Canada. But something else was brought up that was pretty interesting. And Rick Westhead also went on to say that, Alphonso Davies does have a contract with Nike, a sponsorship, right? Jonathan David does have one with Adidas, but yet neither of those companies have featured them in national campaigns in Canada either. It still seems to be hockey players. I wonder if his performance at the World Cup could completely blow through that ceiling as well. And now in Edmonton, I get it. They love Connor McDavid. They love Leon Draisaitl. This is a nation that loves their hockey. But especially Alphonso Davies' own hometown, do you think we'd be able to look up one day and also see his face there within Canada, Ollie? Like, how much could this World Cup completely change that type of marketability for him in his own country?
Yeah, it will. It almost certainly will, I think. And I don't think it will even take us actually getting to the World Cup and seeing him play at the World Cup for that to happen. I think it will be in the weeks and months preceding the World Cup. Alphonso Davies is going to be everywhere you look. I'd be very surprised. Something's wrong if he's not, right? Because he's going to be playing on the biggest stage in sports. He's going to be wearing a Canadian jersey, and he has so much talent and so much ability to create, moments that go around the world. So if you're not trying to associate yourself with Alphonso Davies in Canada before the World Cup, then I don't know what you're doing. But that's another part of the interest. Like, I was going to add this on when we were talking about it earlier. Like, when you talk about Roberto Martinez saying that, Canada's a bit of a dangerous team. Does anyone, I think Alphonso Davies is the best player in pot four. I'm trying to think of if I'm missing anyone here, but is there anyone better than him in pot four? I can't think of anyone. And so that's kind of like,
Thomas Partey's pretty good. Like, I don't, but we're talking about something completely different with Alphonso Davies. It's a player who's playing left back with his club. Like, he's a left back with his club. This guy should be playing up for, like, it's about his persona. Like, he has double the amount of Instagram followers than any other Canadian athlete. Like,
his TikTok is through the roof.
Football is just like a completely different audience beyond hockey or any other, top Canadian sport. And that's not to depreciate the value of those athletes. In this country, we've lived it our whole lives. It's been difficult being part in Canada soccer. Not enough money invested, the corporations slow to be jumping on board, but now they're realizing the power that these athletes actually have, which is a good thing. It's going to be monetized. The business of Canadian soccer is growing, and One Soccer is obviously a big part of that as well. Andy, don't you think, though? I mean, you've dealt with athletes going to Olympics. They go through so much PR and media training in order to be able to handle that event. That is going to be a significant challenge for John Herdman, for himself, for his players, because they're going to have a platform, a spotlight on them like never before. Watch some of the documentaries about the England national team or Brazil or Argentina and the circus that follows these countries and all the pressures and distractions that come along with it. I don't necessarily think that's a great thing for on the field because it adds another layer, right? You try to control as much as you can. How much availability do you want these players to have to take advantage of this growth and interest in Canadian soccer versus let's keep our mind on the game. Let's focus on the task at hand here. This won't be easy. This is unlike anything that any Canadian athlete has gone through before. Like the ones that can compare, Mike Weir winning the Masters. I don't know. There's so few that will draw the attention that these 23, 26 athletes are going to experience at this World Cup. It's going to be really interesting and something that Herdman absolutely needs to take into consideration.
Yeah. I think it would be a mistake to ignore, deny, push out, or not be a part of the circus. And let me explain that, because I think a lot of times, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be within your team and you shouldn't be insulated to a certain extent because you have to stay focused, but the circus is actually part of the tournament, right? And we're just using the word circus, but we know what it is, right? The media attention, the fans, the constant writing of articles, the interviews that are being requested, the shows that are going to be done, the top 10s, the countdowns, the great features that are going to be done. If you know that that's coming, that's always part of it, and you find a way to embrace it. The key is to find balance. The key is to not push it out. because it's going to be there. And no matter how hard you try to insulate yourself, at some point you're going to walk out onto the streets of Qatar, or you're going to walk out onto the pitch, and it's going to come at you like a tidal wave. Control the wave is what I'm saying here, right? Don't deny, don't push away, don't try to ignore the fact that attention is coming your way. Find a way to embrace it, harness it, and make the most of it. Now, there's only so much you can do to prepare. To your point here, Gareth, I've spoken to a lot of Olympians, and they do their best to prepare for all of that. They have sports psychologists on hand for just that. The volume of interviews that go up, right? The demand for your time, demand for your attention, the sponsors who suddenly become involved and they want a part of your life. You're going to get pulled in different directions. They have sports psychologists who also help them with that, and they do the best they can. But they all say that it doesn't matter. There's something special. Nothing can prepare you to walk into that athlete's village and see all the other flags and see all the other athletes from all these other countries as well. And then the moment you step onto your field of play, the roar of the crowd, right? And there, you just see your flag. It's so different. It's so different from pro sports to just represent your country. And I think this is going to be really special. And you're right. Like, that's going to be a task for John Herdman. Like I said, putting them in environments where they're subjected to different kinds of energy. But nothing will prepare them, though, for the first time they step on that pitch against Belgium.
What happens is oftentimes, like, it's just a natural human characteristic. Athletes in a team setup will start worrying about themselves. And this team's spoken about the brotherhood, what keeps them together, what makes it different. You just need to make sure, even when it comes to your squad selection, Ollie, for this tournament, what kind of characters are going to be the proper teammate, are going to put we before me in the tournament. I don't think it's just as simple as picking your best 23 players for Qatar. No. John Herdman needs to get the mix of players right. And if he doubts the character, not that there's bad apples, but perhaps people that might be a little bit more vulnerable to everything that's going to be thrown your way, I think that comes into the squad that he will select for this tournament. He needs to get it right in terms of the right mix and who's going to be able to handle it.
Yeah, the mental aspect is massive. There's no question that you're both right about that. But I also don't really worry about it too much because I think Herdman is so good at managing that side of things.
I think I think he'd worry about it, though.
Maybe, but I think he is very, very good at managing that side of things. And I also think these players take it in their strides. Like, and you got to remember that, okay, this is the first time they're going to a World Cup. And for some of the players in the squad, it's going to be a big step up and maybe more of a worry that they have to handle it in the right way. But Alphonso Davies has won the Champions League. Like, he plays for Bayern Munich every single week. That is intense pressure. And that is real criticism as well when he doesn't play well. Whereas when you compare that to the Canadian media, it's not going to be like the English media. The Canadian media is going to support this team. You know, it's not going to be like
we're a bunch of softies. Are you kidding me? We are a bunch of softies when we talk about this team.
It's not going to be the English tabloids who go
Yeah,
actively.
Gareth, we're nowhere near that.
Yeah, but no, it's not about being susceptible to criticism. It's being susceptible to praise. That's what it is. It goes to your
sure.
Why am I not playing and that player is? Like, these sorts of things. Like, look, John learned some lessons with the women's national team and the pressures of having a home World Cup and players not playing who thought that they should have played. And what happened there? They were knocked out of the tournament prematurely. I think he will use that experience, take it with him, understanding getting those character relationships right is imperative to team success.
Yeah. I don't mean to dismiss it at all. You're right. It's a massive part of this team's success or failure. I just think they have the tools and they have the personalities that they can handle that side of it. And I think they'll be okay.
Well, and they've proven it. I mean, gentlemen, let's not forget from the very start of this World Cup qualifying campaign a year ago, we were very much having conversations about who is he going to call into the squad. And one name that kept coming up was Scott Arfield. And this is not to say anything against him, because I think we all understand the beatings that he took, you know, as a member of this team and coming on in. And he just is, you know, getting older and just said, listen, I can't do it. Now, of course, this team ends up, you know, the trajectory ends up going through the roof. And I'm sure Herdman has had more behind the scenes conversations with him, but Herdman just acknowledged it. Like, at some point, you were not with this team for the first round. You were not with this team for the second round. Now you're going to bring somebody in. And, you know, I'd love to still talk to Junior Hoylett about this, but I remember, Gareth, you putting out a tweet one time mentioning something about Arfield, and Hoylett just, it didn't look like it was something that was accepting.
He put a blue cap Not that what I was saying was incorrect, but that the whole idea that Arfield could be welcomed back into the team, that was going to happen. That
That
was
whole cap
essentially
thing was what I learned too. I didn't realize that was the
blue
lingo that
cap.
the youth, the
I don't
youths are
think it's
using.
just. I think the blue bit is not really part of it. It just happens to be blue.
No, it was the whole cap or no cap. But the bottom line is that this is a team. To your point, though, and the reason why I bring that tweet up is just it's acknowledgement that they have created something, and that they didn't want this type of disruption to the chemistry. And John Herdman has respected that.
There's nothing like hardcore Canadian football supporters. There's nothing that they like more than a potential dual national, right? Like there's nothing on the planet that they like more than that. And there's going to be Marcelo Flores, his name is going to be out there. Does he make his decision between now and November if he wants to represent Mexico or Canada? Because that's actually a realistic name that's put out there, that there's a decision to make. It looks like a player that could potentially be on that level, right? Like there will be names that pop up over the course of the process. How much are you willing to add to this group in terms of a player of potential quality versus someone that what you're getting from them, right? You know how they fit in the team concept. You know what they can contribute to the group. It's a great question, and we're going to go through it, and the rumor mill will churn, and names will be thrown out there, and I can't wait. It's going to be great. As long as it's a name that can actually play for Canada, that's the one stipulation. But there will be names who are absolutely in that mix.
And the other question for Herdman as well on that front is how much are you willing to promise, right? Like, are you willing to say to Marcelo Flores, I will put you in my World Cup squad? Or, should that has to be on merit, right? You can't, I don't know if you can make that promise even for a player as talented as he is. So that's a tricky one to manage.
If you make a spot for Ismael Kone, Ollie, then there's certainly a spot for Marcelo Flores. That's the way that I look at that.
There's going to be some tough conversations because I wonder how many players. So we were talking about the players who were not part of this process, right? And Herdman didn't want to disrupt chemistry. What about players who have been part of this process, but maybe aren't players that make the ultimate team? Like we've seen them in the first, second round, seen them a little bit here and there in the Oct. I don't know. Now, Atiba is a player. I feel like that decision will be made by himself. He's already said, if my body holds up, hopefully I'll be there. He's got his spot. Yeah.
I'd be shocked.
He has his spot. But I don't know. Like, what about some other players that were on the inside or, they were on the inside, now they're on the outside, kind of on the bubble? Those are some tough conversations, I think, as well, that John Herdman is going to have to make as well, because Stefan Eustachio's really stepped up in that midfield. Who knows, to your point, what Kone will end up doing. Ike Ugbo coming on in. What does that mean for other players? What does that mean for Samuel Piette? I don't know. What does that mean, for other players on that back line? Is it Derek Cornelius going to be there? I don't know. Like, what bubble players he might have to have some tough conversations with,
Great
right?
question, Andy.
Yeah. I think that a lot of that comes back to what Wheels mentioned earlier as well, about having a group where you've got some guys who are maybe not going to play massive minutes, and they're going to accept that, and they're going to be great teammates. And that with a Lucas Cavallini, with a Sam Piette, those guys are going to be great teammates no matter what their role is at the World Cup. And I think that does play into your decision, even if you think as a Canadian fan, well, these guys haven't played a ton in the qualifiers, and Cavallini's been in a much better place previously with his club than he is right now. I do think that comes into the decision. I think it should come into the decision that you need 23 or 26 players or whatever it is who are all going to pull together, right? And I think fitting into that is a few players who maybe probably aren't going to start a game, but they're going to be great in training. They're going to be great in the group, and they're going to do whatever you need and ask them to do. Wotherspoon is another one I think who could have a chance of coming back in if he can get fit, because he's that type of player and personality.
Yeah, I mean,
VIP's here, Andy? The VIP's here, I believe.
Oh, is he here? Oh, let's not let him.
His hair was looking magnificent on the broadcast. I got to tell you that much. And his outfit was very Wheeler-esque. I just want to say, I think I wore it this week.
Yeah, that's exactly. He looked at your fashion. I believe John wakes up every day and says, what did Wheeler wear today? Because that is my fashionista. That is my inspiration. Yeah, sure. So John Herdman's going to be joining us momentarily. I do believe he's there. Maybe they're just doing some setups behind the scenes. I want to show him that photo again. If he remembers, I'm sure he remembers 2014 World Cup and how great that coverage was by him. more than anything. But if you're joining us right now, of course, we've been taking you through this. KJ and Charlie were with you from the beginning, doing the watch party for the draw. Canada does get drawn into Group F, so they are with Belgium, Morocco, and Croatia. So fitting that, they make the World Cup for the first time since 1986, and then they save the best for last. Literally the last country to be drawn. The name going up. We're all sitting here waiting, sweating up a storm, and they end up getting drawn into Group F. But there was a scary moment there, and I'm curious to get Herdman's reaction. At least for us, I think there was a scary moment where they could have been drawn into Group E, which has Spain, Germany, and Japan in that one. So did they avoid? I don't know.
There he is.
Yeah,
there
but
he
they're
is.
all right. So busy. Look at all these messages he's checking. He's getting everyone texting him.
He's a busy
Caught
man.
ya. We caught you, John. Welcome into the show. I don't even know how you're digesting the day. Maybe let's just go a little bit more big picture with you and what this whole process has been like, watching the ceremony start, watching all these legends take to the stage and putting their hand in the pots to pull it out. And then, of course, you're the last country. What has this all been like for you?
Well, all I heard was you mocking my fashion and saying I copy Gareth Wheeler.
Looks
eh?
great.
Gareth is claiming.
Great.
He's claiming
I think
you
he was trying
copied
to pay
him.
you a compliment.
It was a compliment, was it? Oh, okay, thanks. No, I'm joking. No, it's been a wonderful moment. I mean, to be up on the panel there with Jules, who's bled for this country, and then just us talking, we're saying like we're in the pot, like our ball's going to come out. You know, how many years have we sat and had to watch this draw and support the other team that most Canadians support? They can put all of those shirts in the draw this time, especially the Italians. They can put them in the draw and just put their Canadian shirt on and enjoy it, Miss Petrillo.
Okay, well, can I confess? So if anyone's ever seen my Zoom calls, this was Italia. That was here.
It was, yeah.
That is now Canada. You are very right. But hey, I was always cheering for the Canadian too.
It's true. I mean, we get that chance. I mean, my vivid memories were '86 World Cup of the whole family in a room, packed together, and just experiencing that hand of God moment, which broke everyone's heart. You know, the moment that I've dreamed of is that one where Canada scored its first ever goal at a World Cup, and the whole country from coast to coast erupts. Mm-hmm. You know, there'll be granddads, grandmas, grandparents, they're the same, kids. You can just see it. That, people having barbecues and it's winter time in Canada, isn't it, eh? But anyway, they'll be having a bloody great time, and the country will go off. When that moment happens, Davies, David, Laren, I don't know who's going to score it, but it'll just be a seminal moment for our sport.
Mm-hmm. Well, if there's one thing this weather has taught us in Edmonton, and then, of course, on Sunday, I think Canadians will continue to celebrate even in the cold. Yeah. But, John, as much as we're embracing this moment and loving it, the wheels already start turning, and I know that's the same for you, and we're already starting to look ahead. What do you want to see happen for your team? What are the types of teams you want to play against as you prepare for Qatar?
Look, there's layers to this, Andy. I think, having been in those dual roles all my career, where you're in a development director type role, you understand the impact a World Cup can have on a country, on a sport. So I'd like to be selfish and just say everything we do is going to be for this team, to get them prepared. But it's deeper. We've got to look at the commercial opportunities. We've got to look at, how we can maximize the finances that can flow and trickle in through the grassroots. So, some of the decisions will be absolutely technical, and others will be about how we grow this sport. But what we do know is we've got Nations League, so we have to go back through the whole CONCACAF process again of maybe even flying to Suriname and playing Panama away again. I mean, this is on our doorstep in June. I mean, to be fair, we'd like to be playing, those type of teams, African or Asian or European. But we'll take out of that experience what we can. That might be a chance to blood some new players, test some new players, test some tactics. But we will get a chance in June to play a friendly match. I've got no doubt, and we'll push hard to get a good friendly game here in Canada. But I think September, given the realities of Nations League in June, means we have to get offshore. We're going to have to get offshore, base ourselves in Europe. We've not had that European experience in Europe for 4 years, where we know we can attract top level opponents for a friendly match. So that's where we'll be selfish around the team and make sure we get what we need. But June, it'll be about, being back in our country, taking some learnings and opportunities we can, but, allowing the fans to just experience our team.
Ollie?
Yeah, speaking of Europe, John, two really interesting European opponents. Obviously, teams with enormous quality, enormous experience, who have been deep at World Cups. But maybe also, and I don't mean to underestimate them in any way here, but maybe also teams that are a little bit older and might have been looking at 2018 as their real big chance to win a World Cup. When you contrast that with the youth of your team, does it give you a bit of an opportunity when you look at those matchups?
Look, I love your mindset, Ollie. We have to look at everything glass half full. We've got to look at every opportunity that presents itself. I just think Canada, we keep our feet on the ground. We recognize our first World Cup in 36 years. We're going to go in there. Everything's an opportunity. Everything to have from the first experience, the training experience, players feeling the cadence of a World Cup to get themselves ready for a home World Cup. But to take this moment, to take it against a Belgium and a Croatia, people like Alistair Johnston, Kamal Miller will get a chance to play against Lukaku, De Bruyne, Jonathan Azario, Stefan Eustáquio to put their wits against Luka Modric. I mean, those moments individually are seminal moments, opportunities for people to show the world. But then as a collective and then as a country to play these type of teams, just opportunity, real opportunity as an underdog to do something that puts Canada so high on the football map.
Gareth, did you want to go?
Nothing to fear, right, John? Nothing to fear here. And
it's excitement.
Sometimes the order of games plays a significant role in how a team's journey plays out through the competition. What do you make of the fact you play Belgium first, Croatia second, then Morocco?
Well, I think Belgium, they'll really put preparation into Canada. I think that's it gives them a little bit of a head start with their quality. I think sometimes you get Belgium in the last game, and the last game they haven't done the same layer of preparation. So they'll be ready for us. There's no doubt that there's 7 days of prep to win your first game, which there'll be massive pressure on that team to beat the underdog Canada. Huge pressure. That there's nothing to gain in that game for a Belgium team, outside of 3 points. And for us, there's everything to gain, everything. So we get, I guess, 7 days of preparing for me, one of the top 3 teams in the tournament. And that's critical there, where we can really put our tactical acumen and then build the spirit and the chemistry around the opportunity of playing the second, third best team in the world. We'll be ready for that game. That's going to be a cracker.
It's funny because fans are already coming up with their dream pre-tournament friendly scenarios, right? And oftentimes it's about teams that that play in a similar region. Well, your native England drew the United States. Is that a phone call that you would want to make to call the English Football Association? And,
well, would
that be a friendly something to look out for?
My agent's Gareth Southgate's agent, so I might just have to see if I can work some magic there. So, who knows? No, I think England usually have their games already locked in like 3 years in advance. But I think it's definitely a good opportunity going into Europe. We need to play some big games here, Gareth. I'll never put my personal, dreams ahead of the team. Like, we've just got to be smart. There are teams that have a similar profile to Belgium that I can see in Europe already that you would say, okay, that's a team. That's something that, the Dutch, I think, have a similar profile to Belgium. You could, target and be more specific. But it's whether teams want to play Canada. That's the next thing. There are layers to this. It's really a complex process. Maybe next World Cup, we're not, begging teams for a match. They're begging to play Canada. So it'll be a tough run through to get what we need. But I said this in my interview. The most important time is the 10 days prior. Like anything, we can do anything, but we never know if that player is going to be there. As I said, we did half of this qualifying campaign without Alphonso Davies, even on the field. So I don't know what I'm building my tactics around until my players are there. And I can't guarantee that until the 10 days when they all get into camp. Now you build the chemistry, the team spirit, the tactical excellence, and we're ready to go. That's what I've learned on my international experiences. These next windows, I think it'll be about seeing if there are any players in MLS that are lighting it up that might be able to push into the 23, or some players in Europe that we've been trying to coax to come back to Canada, maybe to give their time in those windows. People like Ayo Akinola coming back from injury. There's a lot of unanswered questions I've got around my squad. And I said this to the players at the end of the Panama game in our final meeting. The 23 men that got us here may not be the 23 men that get us there. And they have to make good decisions now around their career and take it up to another level, because it will tell a story.
Well, John, we were actually discussing that before you came on, and you've been so bang on with your selection. And as you know, fans, they play GM as well, which is so great in how they get involved, because before every window, there's always been, is this going to get called in? Is this player going to get called in? But you've managed to manage your players so well and saying, this guy may come in, you may not be playing. How is that something that you're going to have to navigate as well? Because you've just said you've had players who got you through those first 3 rounds who may not be a part of it. Like, how huge is that a factor in how you coach this team and making sure everyone is as mentally strong as they can be come Qatar?
Well, I think it was setting it up as these missions. There was a group of men that were going to earn the right to qualify for Qatar. They've just made history. They've left an unbelievable legacy for their country. Now they've got to earn the right to be at Qatar. To be in that 23. They qualified us. They've took our country there, but they've got to keep earning that right. And that's New Canada. That has to be the new standard. I've played a lot of players through this period. I think over 35 players have came into that squad and represented. And each of them have told a story when they've been in. Even that game against Panama, I'm already thinking about which players do I need to still see that I need to get tested, I need to learn some more about. So, while people were looking at the selection there, I was looking at it through a different lens of, yes, we've got to rotate players and get freshness, but I also needed to see, players that hadn't had minutes and who've been on this journey, where are they at?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I can't imagine how tricky that'll be for you. But again, like I said, throughout this whole process, you've pretty much nailed it, which has been absolutely spectacular. Yep. How much as well are you going to sit down right now and start to look at those other 3 teams and the way they play? And I know it's a question we always ask. How are you going to approach that team? And I know a lot of times the response, at least in the past that I've gotten from coaches, is we're not going to worry about them. We play our game. But how much do you look at the way they play?
You can't. You can't not worry about your opponent. I mean, this is, I mean, the art of war. I mean, what we don't get to control is the terrain, which is what we've been able to control in these last matches against USA and Mexico at home. That's out of our control. So, tactically, we're going to have to be spot on. But you can't overthink the tactics, because there'll be coaching changes in the next 6 months. You never know. You would never have thought the Spain coach would have changed the night before the tournament started in the last World Cup. Players will get injured. Star players won't make it. People that you've built strategies around. So there's an initial scouting phase and a tactical blueprint preparation for those teams. And then you go through the tactical blueprints for the teams out of the tournament. But you've got to leave yourself space to think. You've got to leave yourself the creative space to be adaptable. And that's even with your own team. Like I say, did I know Alphonso Davies was going to be there? You know, in those 7 games against the USA today? Of course, Fonzie's playing USA at home. And then he's not. He's not there.
Yeah.
So you have to worry about yourself, but leave yourself space to think. But all of the work's got to be done on the opponent. Like, you have to know them inside out and then be ready for whatever comes. I've said this, I think our DNA at this stage in our evolution, we have to be an adaptable team. I mean, that's it. The most adaptable team and adapt to our opponents. That's been our strength, where we can be a bit of a chameleon and make it difficult for them to tie us down and be able to change in game. You know, when you're fighting lions, you can't fight as a lion. That's you know, Belgium are a lion with world-class players in every single position on the pitch. We've got players that are proving they're world-class players. So, you know, for us, we've got to rely an element on the tactics and have a much higher team spirit, which is this pioneering mindset to be first. You know, Belgium aren't going to be first at something, you know, in a group stage. We are. We've got so much to play for, even in a group stage. They just want to get out of it into the next round. We want to score our first goal. We want to keep our first clean sheet. We want to beat our first ever top 10 opponent in the world. It's never happened before. So much for us to get after, and that's what I've got to burn into the minds of our players.
John, before we let you go, I want to show you a flashback photo. This was back at the 2014 World Cup when you were a guest host alongside me.
Look at that young man.
Look at you. And I got to say,
this job does to you.
I looked at that and I just thought, I mean, obviously we never know what the future holds, but I am so proud of you because it was such a pleasure working with you in 2014 because you brought such a different viewpoint of the game. You made our broadcast better. And I can't believe that 8 years later, you've gone from guest hosting as an analyst on a Men's World Cup to coaching in one. How does that feel?
Just anything's possible, eh? You work hard, you fight for what you believe in, and you just don't listen to those doubters. You do not listen to them. You just keep moving forward with your belief in what you can achieve. I mean, I'm a snotty-nosed kid from Consett County, Durham. I mean, what am I doing here in Canada? Talking to you guys about going to Qatar. I mean, holy wow. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, some people don't get better with age. That's for sure.
Stop it.
Oh, come on.
Like a fine wine. Look at
I don't know about that. Wow.
Congratulations, you deserve it. And please do not take your fashion tips from Gareth. We do love our Gareth.
Come on. What's sharp.
Okay,
John,
team.
Have a good vacation.
Yes.
Rest.
Get that vacation. That is John Herdman, the head coach of the Canadian men's team. Look at that. I mean, I can't even imagine how it's got to feel for him. I'm sure he's still in it. So he'll have a moment where he'll digest everything. Maybe it's when he's on the beach somewhere, who knows, when he takes his vacation. But I also love the honesty as well, because how many times do we get that, guys? And listen, you've been covering sports a long time, just the same as me. Oh, you're taking on so-and-so, right? How do you approach it? Oh, we don't worry about them. We just worry about us. Meanwhile, Herdman's like, no, we're going to be doing like graphic charts and spreadsheets and Excel sheets on the opposition. You have to. That is what you have to do to be successful. And I think that's why when you do look at this team, there is this sense of comfort, Ollie, that they're in very good hands.
Yeah, I think that's going to be Canada's X factor in the way Canada can hurt these teams is they are going to be super prepared for every opponent they play, because we know that, you know, Herdman and his team do an enormous amount of work behind the scenes to be prepared for every game. And then they are the underdog, right? So he mentioned it there, that there's not the expectation on Canada that, you know, they're going to go into these games and dominate and have loads of the ball and try and go toe to toe with Belgium. You just can't do that because we just still don't have the quality in this team as much as it's improved to try and do that. So you try and find opportunities, you try and find ways to hurt. It's, you know, identify weaknesses and exploit those weaknesses. And that's something that I think Canada can do against these opponents. Doesn't make them favorites, doesn't mean they're going to win these games guaranteed or anything like that, but it gives them a shot. And I think Canada has, both the kind of structure and then the weapons as well to cause some problems there.
Yeah. Well, this has been... What do you have? Something?
I've never met anyone like John Herdman before in my life. Just listening to him speak, nothing was handed to the guy at all. He's worked, he's fought, he's scrapped, but having the vision that he does and the ability to read people, not players, but people for who they are, what makes them tick. Then on top of that, just having the tactical mind that he has, we are very lucky to have him in this country. And just hearing him speak there, I mean, you can listen to him all day. Thought it was interesting about the squad, kind of what we were touching on, guys. Just like,
because it's not about who's going to be here. It's more about who's not going to be here. Those are tough conversations he's going to have.
There is some talks that that squads are going to be expanded to 26. We'll see, which would make that job a little bit easier. He shares an agent with Gareth Southgate as well. Like, it's not just about Canada playing a profile of a European nation. England plays the United States. It's like a natural pull. Like, if you're England, who do we want to play that, kind of plays like the United States? Canada would kind of be the closest fit. Those are just my final thoughts on that.
Guys, we're going to be talking about this for another 230 something days because Canada's going to the World Cup and we get to talk about them. So this is so exciting. Congratulations to that squad once again. And it just keeps churning for this national program because then the women begin their World Cup qualification process this summer and we are covering it all right here on One Soccer. So big thank you to KJ and Charlie taking you through the viewing party. Thank you to Gareth and Ollie. I'm Andy Petrillo.
You don't want to go to 4 hours? With 13 minutes off of 4 hours.
That's great. I'm going to toe punt to the finish line right now.
By the way, Ollie, Consett versus Milton Keynes. Who you got?
Consett versus Milton Keynes. I gotta say, I've never been to County Durham, so I can't give a fair opinion. But it's hard to top Milton Keynes for entertainment and attractions and all of these different things.
Unless you're Yuki Tsunoda.
Yeah. All right, Ollie, we know you've been quarantined in Costa Rica, but we cannot wait to have you come back home, especially since it's snowing outside. So soak up that heat while you can, because you ain't getting it here in Toronto. Boys, a pleasure. I'll see everybody next week because One Soccer Today, of course, continues. And thank you to everybody. Enjoy the months to come as you get set to cheer on your team for Qatar 2022. See ya.